Hello, everybody. It's Neil Green, your instructor, and I wanted to come to you today and give you a little lesson on how to use the internet to research and find lesson plans that are already out there and then kind of adapt them, or how I approach adapting them to meet my needs. And as many of you mentioned, the Kendall College instructional design template can seem cumbersome in some ways. It's absolutely comprehensive, that's for sure. And depending on where you work, say you have 5 different teaching jobs, you could have 5 different templates that you use at those jobs. Some don't even require you to turn in lesson plans. Even if that's the case, writing lessons and planning your day is essential to a successful day at school. So, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to create everything on your own, because there are so many great ideas out there, and quite frankly, there probably isn't an idea that hasn't already been done. So why not let somebody else do some of the work for you? So what I did was I started out here. Let me show you this. I went to the Hot Chalk Lessons Plans page, and I identified the grades that I wanted to work with, 1 and 2. And I'll go through. What I did was download this and copy it into a Word document, and we're going to discuss it. I'm not going to discuss the whole thing, just the first activity, because we have a lot to go over. And again, I want to keep it to limit this video to less than 15 minutes or so. But anyway, there's a lot to cover, so let's get going. Now I go back here, and here's the downloaded lesson. This is exactly what I got from the web page, and I put it in Word format. And so I wrote our objective as the students will explore how to use internet resources for lesson ideas, and I'll discuss how to adapt the lesson plans for your students. Yeah, definitely, it's not a matter of copying and pasting these lesson plans and you can say you're done, because you have to make them fit the needs of your students. All students are different, and you're going to have to adjust and add or delete to what you see and what you read in the lesson plan to make it fit your needs. Okay. Key questions for you. What do I need, or what do I want, and what do I need to teach? What do I want to teach? But oftentimes you are told what to teach, or you have to cover a certain topic, focus, or skill. So you got to figure that out before you start looking. That'll help you save time. And go on a search. Google is great. Go on the search, and that I wrote the source here for you guys. It's the ultimate free resource for teachers, and the particular lesson we're doing is establishing a summer bucket list that transitions to letter writing. Okay, and that's from the lessonplanspage.com, and there are a lot of these out there. So I'm just going to kind of comment as we go, and I highlighted some different things and when I want to comment, etc. So let's see here. So the source, this source is I generated this. There may be a couple things that are not completely APA compliant. APA is so picky, and believe me, I had a paper I just wrote with 6, or maybe it was even more, 8 pages of references, and everything has to be perfect. And one thing that I use and find helpful is right here. It's called citationmachine.net, and I believe I still have that open. Let me see. That site looks like this, and if you take a look around, you'll see that start by choosing your style APA, and it'll help you format your reference list. So this was what was on there and what I posted. But if you could see right there, it gives how you should some suggestions on how you should approach citing that properly. All right, and again, as long as I can find out where it's from, the year and that sort of thing, and where I can find it, that's all I really care about. It doesn't have to be in perfect APA format for me. That's my personal preference. I'm not speaking for everybody. Some instructors like it that to be perfect. My biggest concern is being able to find it, telling me where you got it and giving credit to that author. Okay, and if you notice in this plan, you probably haven't looked at it yet, but if you notice, the context for learning is not in this plan, and you may be asking, so why do I have to include it? The simple answer to that question is because in order to be effective with the children you teach, you need to know the community, school, and classroom. And we're going to leave it at that. And that includes the demographic information that you created in your first and second plans. And the one, once it was approved, once I approved that context for learning section, it remains the same for all three of your plans. So unless something major happens in the community or school. But for the most part, yeah, once you do it and kind of dig into where you're teaching and some basics about the community in school, then and the classroom, then you're good to go. Okay, now we get into what I copied and pasted, and everything I didn't will show up in red. Let me see. Oh, and while we're in here, you're going to notice this week, whenever you get back your lesson plans, that they're going to be track changes, and you just go to all markup. That's what I do, and then I can type these notes in here. Okay. And you'll see all the notes that I typed are in red. Okay, but this particular lesson plan had a title, which, okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. And the goal was, and we'll get into the goals and objectives in a minute, but that fits into your lesson plan. The concept, which I would think is the same as the theme, 6 traits or organization. The grade level and Common Core standard. Notice this instructor only had one and how that was listed. I prefer the actual this, and then you can just copy and paste the actual words to what it is, because it's good to know. I mean, I don't know what that means, 1.1. I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know what that is. It's just nice to have here. But again, the major point is pick a few. Don't pick, you could probably go through the Common Core standards and pick every one that would have some aspect to your lesson. Pick the ones that match your lesson the best, or the closest, I should say. Okay, and I thought this was interesting. The author of this lesson plan wrote a general goal, and I guess that would be kind of like the key questions that I wrote for you guys up here, and what, kind of it sets the framework for what I'm looking for. It's not necessarily the objectives, but it's closely tied to the objectives. And it's confusing, isn't it? All these goals, objectives, standards, all that sort of thing. So yeah, think of it as a funnel. You're funneling down from the open end, the big end, to the smaller end. The biggest end would be the state standards, all the way down to the little end, your objectives. Okay? But the general goal for this lesson is to generate an idea to accomplish over the summer. Students will create a proposal inviting a friend to join them as they complete their summer goal. Okay, interesting. And I thought that was interesting. Maybe I would write, I am a big fan of writing your objective on the chalkboard, and starting out, the first thing you do is read that aloud. And this is in, as you can see, kid-friendly language, meaning kids should be able to understand this. So start out with that. Then we get down to specific objectives, and I want you to notice, this is something we've been working on, and I want you to notice the action verbs that I always bring up whenever I provide suggestions for you. And the first one is students will explore and express their ideas and opinions. Okay, that can be measured. They either do it or they don't. That's what ask that question. Can you observe students doing this objective or not? And if you can ask that question and it fits, then you got it. All right, now the students will recognize that writing is an important tool for communicating. Is this a measurable objective? I don't think so. I mean, it's to some degree it is, but I suggest the students will identify 3 reasons why writing is an important tool for communicating. And an assessment matches the objective. It has to measure what you ask students to do. And an assessment of that could be a quick journal entry. And obviously the kids can write because it's a writing activity. So yeah, I would have a quick journal activity and write 3 reasons or maybe 1 or 2 reasons, whatever, based on your students, why writing is an important tool for communicating. And that's your assessment. You collect it and you can easily see, can they do it or not? And the other objectives here, students will organize their thoughts and express them through writing. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of that one, but I would probably delete that one. There we go. Students will be able to determine realistic and non-realistic goals. That's a good one, because a realistic goal would be to learn how to swim over the summer. A non-realistic goal would be to climb Mount Everest over the summer. Well, I mean, you want to be careful with that though, because you want to responding to incorrect answers or um, you know, kind of crazy ideas from kids. You don't want to be, you want to be encouraging. You don't want to deflate their goals, but you want to keep them realistic. So that's kind of the art of teaching, and with experience, you kind of understand how to respond to wrong answers. It's not that easy. Okay, moving on. Anyway, this author wrote this section as prerequisite learning, which is the same as prior knowledge. Establishing prior knowledge, which we talked about, and I wrote to you about in your student in your evaluations of your lesson plans and things, is so important. And the author wrote it this way: the lesson assumes, and assumes was an interesting word, that students have been writing independently and have used a keyboard for their writing, computer not required. Okay, I'm just going to keep going here. Students may need to understand the difference between realistic and non-realistic summer goals, and what that means is that would go in an anticipated interruption section of the lesson plan. And what that is they may not know what realistic means, and they may not know what non-realistic means. So you could provide some examples. It could be something as easy as writing it on the board with a T-chart and writing examples of realistic goals and non-realistic goals, and just having a quick 3-minute discussion about it. That would establish that prior knowledge. But one thing I wanted you to think about, and I'm not asking you to answer this question, but I'm just think about it. Think about it. When is the last time you hand wrote a letter and not used a computer? And I guess, why do we ask students to do it? I think obviously it's important for them to write, but I am a huge fan of students writing using a computer, because that's really what we do. It makes the process of editing a little bit more user-friendly. It's just the way of the world. I'm all about asking children, students, to do things that matter and are relevant to right now. Okay, but anyway, that's for you to think about. Materials needed. Okay, and that looks familiar, right? You got to be ready. You got to have everything out and ready. And if you'll notice, this book, Click Clack Moo Cows, it's always a great idea to start off a lesson with a book if it ties to what you're doing. I don't know that particular book, but I assume that it would tie to the objectives. But anyway, then you plan out the basics like paper, pencils, etc. And beforehand, make buckets, or if there's time, you can have the students make their own buckets. What that means is you have some teachers have buckets in the middle of a group of student desks where they have materials like rulers, scissors, crayons, pencils, etc. That's up to you. I think it's a great idea. I never did it, which I honestly can't remember why I didn't, but I like that idea. And one thing I wrote up here is no if at the time of your plan. You either have this or you do not. Whenever you write or type up your plan, at that point, there are no more ifs or, maybe students will do this, maybe they'll do that. By the time you write your plan, it is students will do this, and that's it. Because, this is the last step before you actually teach. So you have to have everything in line. And also for materials, the brainstorming activity sheet and pre-made writing paper with the letter template. And what that means is it's right here. So some of these lessons are pretty great. This is the bucket list where students will create that. And if you go down, writing paper, which I don't know, I wouldn't print that. It's just basically a piece of paper, but I guess it fits the bucket, so that's nice. And then I'm not sure what that is really. And then we have all these pre-made worksheets. I guess that they could they could use any one of those for the summer bucket list. But I would, and we'll discuss this later, put them together as a bulletin board, and that gives everybody some ownership, and we'll discuss what that means. But I wanted to show you this because a lot of these lesson plans come with materials that you need to kind of pull it off. So it's, they're worth checking out. Okay, the brainstorming activity. Let me see if I have that pulled up here. And what that looks like is the students will write a goal, the person they'd like to invite, and why they want to invite that person. Okay,